You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Your brain is replaying that one awkward sentence you said 3 days ago. Then it jumps to your inbox, then to your bank account, then to that decision you still have not made. You scroll options, compare scenarios, open 10 tabs, and somehow feel more stuck than before. Your body is exhausted, but your mind refuses to clock out. Most people call this an overthinking problem. However, this view is completely misguided. What you are really experiencing is an under-deciding problem. Your brain is holding dozens of open loops with no closure, no clear done, no definite choice. In other words, your mind is not malfunctioning. It is waiting for instructions it never receives. Here's the most important detail. Overthinking is not a character flaw. It is a survival feature. Your brain evolved to predict, control, and avoid danger. It constantly runs simulations. If I say this, they might react like that. If I choose this path, something bad could happen. This is because in a harsh environment, the person who anticipated threats lived longer than the person who just went with the flow. The problem is that modern society turned this ancient survival tool into a 24/7 notification system. There is no lion in the bushes, but your brain treats a delayed text like a life or death signal. It keeps spinning scenarios because it thinks more thinking equals more safety. And guess what? It rarely makes you safer. It just drains your energy and your ability to act. Research on rumination shows it is strongly linked to anxiety and depression, and it almost never leads to better solutions, only worse mood. Yet your brain clings to it because it feels like effort, like you are doing something. In this scenario, you are spending mental effort without ever cashing it out into a decision. But if your brain can overthink you into anxiety, it can also overthink you into discipline. The raw machinery is the same. The difference is what you allow it to obsess over. Instead of looping fears and hypotheticals, you can train it to loop decisions and actions. If this happens, then I do that. If it is 7 p.m., then I sit and plan tomorrow. You give it rules instead of open questions. Most people believe calm, disciplined people simply have fewer thoughts or stronger willpower. However, this is not what is really happening. They have built systems and default choices that force decisions early. Clothes are chosen the night before. Money is moved automatically. Work blocks are scheduled. There is nothing left to debate all day. In other words, their environment and routines close loops. Before their brain can spin them into spirals, they still have the same survival wiring. They just give it clean instructions. By the end of this video, you will know how to do the same. How to turn your brain from a worry machine into a discipline engine, using its love of prediction, patterns, and closure against overthinking itself. And there is one specific mental switch that makes this possible, shifting from what if to if then. That tiny change rewires how your brain handles worry. But before we break that down, you need to see how your brain was actually built to overthink in the first place. Because here is the uncomfortable truth. Your brain was not built for peace of mind. It was built for survival. For almost all of human history, its job description was brutally simple. Do not die today. Imagine your ancestors as barefoot hunter-gatherers, waking up with no fridge, no calendar, no email. There were predators in the dark, disease in the water, and never a guarantee of the next meal. In this scenario, a brain that constantly scanned for danger, replayed yesterday's mistakes, and imagined every possible what if was not a problem. It was elite survival technology. And guess what? Overthinking back then was a form of discipline. Before anyone left camp, the mind would simulate worst-case scenarios. What if there is a tiger by the river? What if that plant is poisonous? What if the neighboring tribe is hostile today? That mental rehearsal cost energy and effort. But the reward was simple. You stayed alive. The brain learned that anxious prediction equals safety. Here's the most important detail. Social overthinking was also life or death. In a tiny tribe, being rejected did not just mean feeling awkward, it meant losing protection, food, and shelter. This is because, for your ancient nervous system, they might not like me translated directly into, I might not survive. So replaying conversations, obsessing over how you were perceived, and scanning for micro-rejection was adaptive. Annoying, but adaptive. Fast forward to modern society. The tigers are mostly gone. But the same survival brain is now staring at notifications, deadlines, and 100 possible life paths. There is no clear predator, just an endless list of abstract threats. That email you have not answered. That career move you might regret in 10 years. That text you sent 3 hours ago with no response. The problem is that your brain treats all of these like rustling bushes that might hide danger. In other words, the barefoot hunter-gatherer is now sitting inside a high-speed supercomputer, trying to survive group chats, performance reviews, and long-term financial planning. It is like running Stone Age software on the latest hardware, and then blaming the hardware when the system crashes. Of course you spiral. Of course you feel mentally exhausted. Feeling stuck, indecisive, and drained is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that your survival brain is doing its job a little too enthusiastically in the wrong environment. Your ancient wiring wants immediate safety, certainty, and energy conservation. Your modern life demands risk, decisions, and long-term discipline. Overthinking is the friction between those two worlds. So when you lie awake analyzing a text, or spend 3 weeks choosing a job, your brain thinks it is protecting you from exile and death. It is outdated, not defective. And once you see that, you can stop fighting it like an enemy and start redesigning how it works for you. Next, we will turn this overactive survival system into a structured if-then engine, so your brain finally feels safer taking action than staying stuck in loops. So when your brain keeps spinning, it is not trying to annoy you, it is trying to protect you. But here is where most people fall into a very sneaky trap. They start to secretly believe, I overthink because I am smart, I am deep, I see angles other people miss. Overthinking feels like intelligence. It sounds like analysis. It wears a lab coat. However, in most cases, that lab coat is just fear in disguise. Your brain is running endless simulations, not because the situation is complex, but because it does not feel safe. It is searching for the one perfect move that guarantees zero pain, zero rejection, zero risk. And guess what? That move does not exist. So you stay stuck, burning mental energy, calling it being thorough, while your life quietly waits in the background. Here is the most important detail. Real analysis eventually produces a decision, or at least a clear next step. Rumination never does. Research on repetitive negative thinking shows it is strongly linked to anxiety and depression, and it rarely leads to better solutions. The problem is that the more you think, the more your mood drops, and the lower your mood, the more your brain keeps scanning for danger. You get paralysis instead of progress. In this scenario, your brain is chasing relief, not insight. This is because it was built for immediate survival, not elegant long-term planning in modern society. So if you try to beat overthinking with raw willpower, by yelling at yourself to stop thinking, to calm down, to be rational, you are basically wrestling your own survival system. And guess what? It does not work. This is where design comes in. Habit researchers like James Clear point out that real discipline does not come from force. It comes from design. In other words, disciplined people are not mystical willpower athletes with perfectly quiet minds. They are system designers. They make a decision once, build an environment around it, and then let that system carry most of the effort. Think about the person who never overthinks going to the gym. It looks like incredible discipline. Often, it is just design. Clothes by the door, workout partner waiting, same time every day, no debate. There is nothing left to negotiate with, no open loop for the brain to obsess over. So here is the core thesis of this entire video. You do not beat overthinking by arguing with your thoughts. You beat it by changing the structure around your thoughts, your default decisions, your rules, your environment, so your brain has fewer unsolved problems to chew on. Because when there are no endless options to reevaluate, your brain has to do something radical. It has to move. And in the next sections, we are going to flip the script completely. You will see how the same mechanisms that currently fuel your spirals, prediction, pattern seeking, and those unfinished loops your brain cannot let go of, can be weaponized so they start pushing you into action, into closure, and into discipline. The twist is that once you understand this, overthinking does not disappear. It starts working for you instead of against you, and the way you trigger that switch is not what you expect. And this is where we need to clear up one painful lie you've probably carried for years. The idea that if your brain feels like an enemy, it means you are broken. You are not broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. It just happens to be running ancient survival code in a modern society that constantly overloads it. Think about some of your worst moments. You are lying in bed, completely exhausted, and your brain decides that now is the perfect time to replay that one sentence you said 3 days ago. Not the whole conversation, just the most awkward 3 seconds, on loop, like a highlight reel of regret. Or you open your phone to check one thing. A message, an email, the weather. 2 minutes, you tell yourself. And guess what? You look up and an hour is gone. You do not even remember half of what you scrolled. Just this foggy sense that you wasted time and now everything will be harder. Or you plan your day perfectly. You write the schedule, color code the tasks, maybe even feel a little proud. Then you watch yourself ignore the plan in real time, while another part of you sits in the background whispering, "What is wrong with you?" Here's the most important detail. These are not random failures. This is a cycle. You overthink, so you delay. You delay, so you feel guilt. You feel guilt, so you overthink even more, trying to explain yourself, justify yourself, fix yourself. In this scenario, every decision becomes a test. If I do this, maybe I am disciplined. If I do not, maybe I am lazy forever. The problem is that when every tiny choice feels like a verdict on your worth, your brain goes into threat mode. And this is because your brain was built for survival, not for calm, rational long-term planning under emotional attack. So it protects you the only way it knows how. By hesitating, by stalling, by searching for the perfect move that will finally prove you are enough. In other words, your so-called enemy brain is not malicious. It is overprotective and outdated. You are not failing because you are weak. You are using the wrong strategy. Trying to fight thoughts with more thoughts. Trying to use willpower against a system wired to conserve energy and chase immediate comfort. This video will not tell you to just stop thinking or just be confident. That advice ignores how the brain actually works. Instead, we are going to treat your mind like a system, with rules, bugs, and features that can be debugged and redesigned. By the end of this, you will know why your brain loops, how to interrupt it in under 60 seconds, and how to build simple systems. So most of the things you currently obsess over no longer need thinking at all. They just run. To do that, we first need to uncover the 3 rules your brain quietly lives by: survival, comfort, and efficiency. Once you see those clearly, your overthinking will stop feeling random and start making sense. And that is when you can finally change it. So let's open up the machine. Under all your spirals, your brain is quietly following 3 rules. Do not die, do not waste energy, and do not think harder than necessary. Every hesitation, every loop, every "let me just check one more thing" is your brain trying to optimize those 3 priorities. Rule 1 is survival. Your brain's first job is simple: keep you away from pain and danger. In other words, it is always asking, what could go wrong here? This is because, in the past, missing one real threat could mean game over. Today, you are not running from lions. You are staring at emails, messages, and decisions. But the prediction system is the same. Your brain constantly simulates the future. It runs little mental movies. What if they get upset? What if I fail? What if I look stupid? In an actual jungle, that prediction loop ends when you either run or fight. In modern society, the threat is social, abstract, and endless. There is no clear finish line. So the prediction never completes. It just keeps spinning. And guess what? That spinning feels like overthinking. You are not broken. You are using a survival tool in an environment it was never designed for. You rehearse conversations 10 times. You relive one awkward comment from last week. Your brain thinks it is protecting you. It is actually draining you. Rule 2 is energy conservation. For most of human history, food was scarce and effort was expensive. Wasting energy could literally kill you. So your brain learned a simple policy: avoid unnecessary effort. A hard workout, deep work session, or difficult conversation. Your ancient wiring labels all of that as potentially risky and not immediately rewarding. The problem is that your long-term goals live on the other side of that effort. But the brain does not care about long-term by default. It cares about getting you through today with minimal cost. So it nudges you toward the mental equivalent of the couch. Scrolling, fantasizing, planning, analyzing. You feel busy. You are actually stalling. Here's the most important detail. Your brain also craves cognitive ease. It loves what is familiar, simple, and predictable. New, complex, uncertain tasks feel expensive. So when you face them, your brain throws up doubts, what-ifs, and endless research. Not because you are weak, but because thinking harder than necessary violates Rule 3. In this scenario, your entire life becomes a perfect storm. Evolution in a hostile environment wired your brain for survival, comfort, and ease. Now you live in a world of infinite choices, abstract threats, and constant comparison. The prediction system goes into overdrive. The energy system slams the brakes. The result is overthinking, indecision, and mental fatigue. We could give this whole pattern a name: the comfort algorithm. It is your default code. If a situation is uncertain, effortful, and without an immediate reward, then stall and simulate. And guess what? The rest of this video is about rewriting that algorithm so your brain still feels safe, but action becomes the easiest option. So when your comfort algorithm says stall and simulate, your brain is not just being dramatic. It is following a very specific rule: never leave an open loop alone. This is where one of the most powerful forces behind overthinking quietly takes over your life. It is called the Zeigarnik effect. In simple terms, your brain remembers and revisits unfinished tasks more than completed ones. A conversation you still need to have, a decision you keep postponing, an email you keep meaning to send. Your brain flags these as incomplete and keeps dragging them back into your awareness, like a notification that never turns off. Here's the most important detail. This is not a moral issue. This is because your brain evolved for survival, not for peace of mind. In the wild, forgetting an unfinished task could be dangerous. If you did not finish building the shelter, or you did not resolve a threat, you were at risk. So your brain learned a simple strategy: keep reopening the file until the loop is closed. In modern society, This same survival feature becomes mental noise. When you avoid decisions, delay difficult conversations, or never define what done actually means, your brain treats those as open projects. In other words, every vague worry becomes a task with no checklist. So it pops up in the shower, when you try to sleep, and right when you finally sit down to focus. You know that constant background hum of, "I should really do something about." That is the Zeigarnik effect in action. Your brain is trying to close loops, but it has no clear way to do it. So it replays the same scene, reanalyzes the same details, and rejudges the same decision. You feel busy, but nothing moves. High effort, zero progress. And guess what? The problem is that your brain does not distinguish between mental work and real work very well. In this scenario, rumination feels productive. It feels like discipline. But it is just your survival, wiring burning energy without a result. The good news is, you can flip this. You can weaponize the Zeigarnik effect so it drives action instead of anxiety. When you create tiny, clearly completable steps, your brain locks onto them the same way it locks onto worries. Send one email, write one paragraph, choose one good enough option, and call the decision final. Once you do that, the loop loses power. The brain relaxes. Implementation intentions make this even stronger. If X happens, then I do Y. No debate, no overthinking. Your brain now has a rule to complete, instead of a question to obsess over. In a moment, we will build specific 60-second interrupts and rule-based systems that hijack this unfinished business obsession. But first, you need to see exactly how these open loops are already hiding in your everyday life. Because once you spot them, you will never experience your overthinking the same way again. So let's bring this out of the abstract and into your actual Tuesday afternoon. Because overthinking does not live in theory. It lives on your couch, in your browser tabs, and in that one text message you still have not answered. Picture this. You tell yourself, "I'm going to the gym after work." Noble, logical. Then the moment arrives. Your body is on the couch, shoes off, phone in hand. In this scenario, your brain quietly runs the numbers. Going to the gym costs effort. The results are uncertain, and there is no immediate reward. The couch? Zero effort, guaranteed comfort, instant dopamine from a screen. And guess what? Your brain starts feeding you very reasonable thoughts. I'll start tomorrow. I need the perfect plan first. Today was stressful, I should rest. It feels like careful analysis. It is actually an energy-saving script. Here's the most important detail. The problem is that your brain is not asking, what builds my discipline and long-term health? It is asking, how do I avoid discomfort right now? Overthinking becomes the intellectual mask for that escape. You are not lazy. You are running an ancient survival program in a modern society that demands long-term consistency. Same pattern with study or deep work versus TikTok. You sit down to focus. Real work is uncertain and cognitively expensive. You might fail. You might feel stupid. There is no quick reward. Meanwhile, the app on your phone offers guaranteed novelty, predictable dopamine, zero risk. Your internal comfort algorithm whispers, just 5 minutes. 25 videos later, the reward is gone and the guilt arrives. Then you start overthinking the guilt instead of the task. Why am I like this? Maybe I'm just not disciplined. In other words, your brain just turned a simple choice into a full-blown identity crisis. Now look at reading a technical book or trying to write something important. You open the page or the document and feel a wave of, "This is hard," and "What if it's not good enough?" This is because your brain is trying to escape effort by making the task emotionally dangerous. If it might prove you are not smart enough, of course you hesitate. But those thoughts are not deep truths. They are exit strategies disguised as insight. Social life? Same wiring. You replay that slightly awkward joke you made 3 days ago. You stare at a seen message with no reply and construct 10 different storylines. Your brain treats a tiny social risk as if the tribe might exile you at sunrise. From a survival perspective, that made sense. From a modern perspective, it is exhausting. And when you face big decisions, job offers, projects, relationship moves, your brain demands perfect certainty before acting. So you research endlessly, make new pros and cons lists, and mentally simulate every possible future. You are not deciding. You are trying to eliminate all risk. It never works. Here is the pattern underneath every one of these. Uncertainty plus effort plus no immediate reward equals mental loops instead of movement. Once you see that, you can stop taking every thought personally and start designing around your brain's default settings. Because next, we are going to turn these exact moments, the couch, the app, the awkward text, into triggers for fast, 60-second interrupts that pull you out of the spiral and straight into action. So those 60-second interrupts pull you out of the spiral. But now we need to answer a harder question. Why was the spiral so strong in the first place? Why did it feel like no matter how much you decided to stop overthinking, you kept getting dragged back in? Most people assume this is a willpower problem. However, this view is completely misguided. The problem is that you are living inside a design conflict. Your survival-focused brain and your long-term self are running two different operating systems on the same hardware. One wants comfort, certainty, and safety right now. The other wants growth, courage, and long-term reward. Overthinking is the argument between them. In other words, every time you sit on the couch saying, "I should really start," your higher self is raising its hand, and your survival brain is yanking it back down. And guess what? The survival brain usually wins. Not because you are weak, but because it is older, faster, and optimized for immediate survival, not modern society's idea of discipline. Here's the most important detail. When you tried to just be stronger in the past, you were basically trying to outswim a rip current. You told yourself, "Tomorrow I will not overthink, I will just do it." But you kept the same environment, the same phone next to the bed, the same open tabs, the same vague to-do list. In this scenario, failure was not a surprise, it was guaranteed. The current, your design, was stronger than your willpower. James Clear captures this perfectly. Motivation is overrated. Environment is more important. This is because an environment full of friction, options, and triggers forces your brain to make constant micro-decisions. Open apps, open notifications, open tasks, open loops. Each one says, "Think about me." And your brain, trying to predict and control everything, happily overthinks them all. Every undecided thing in your life becomes a tab open in your mind. That email you did not answer. That conversation you are avoiding. That project you should start soon. At 9 a.m., you still have decision energy. By 9 p.m., after a full day of tiny choices, that energy is gone. You default to autopilot, scrolling, worrying, replaying conversations, because the system requires too much fresh effort to act. So the goal is not to kill your survival brain. You actually need it. The real game is to redesign your life so that what feels safe and easy to your brain is also what serves your long-term self. You align the comfort algorithm with your goals instead of fighting it. From this point on, we are done talking about trying harder. We are going to talk about systems, rules, defaults, and environments that quietly remove decisions, so there is less to overthink and more that happens automatically. So now that your environment is doing half the discipline work for you, we need a tool for the other half. The moments when your brain still hijacks you and starts spinning. Because overthinking is not random. It's a looped program. Once it starts, it feeds itself. And guess what? You do not break a loop with more thinking. You break it with an interrupt. This is because your brain runs on patterns. Trigger to thought, to emotion, to more thought. It feels intelligent, almost productive, to keep analyzing. In other words, you feel like you are working on the problem, while you are actually just rehearsing the same fear. The problem is that this loop can run for hours without producing a single real-world result. So we use pattern interrupts, short, sharp signals that tell the brain, we're doing something different now. The fastest way is physical. Stand up, leave the room, splash cold water on your face, do 20 seconds of intense movement, push-ups against the counter, fast squats, running in place. It will feel silly. Your brain will say, this is not solving anything. Do it anyway. Here's the most important detail. When you change your physiological state, you send a survival-level message to the brain. The situation has shifted. Heart rate changes, breathing changes, temperature changes. The old mental pattern no longer matches the body. That mismatch creates a tiny window where you can choose a new focus instead of sliding back into the spiral. Then we add a mental interrupt. As soon as you move, ask one scripted question. What is the smallest action I can take in the next 60 seconds that would move this forward? Not, how do I fix my life? Not, what if this goes wrong? Just the smallest action, 60 seconds. In this scenario, your brain suddenly has a concrete target instead of an infinite maze. Research on rumination shows that endless analysis almost never improves solutions, it just worsens mood. But behavioral science also shows that action can shift emotion faster than more thinking. So after the interrupt, you immediately do one micro-action, send one message, write one sentence, open the document and name the file. Choose one option as good enough for now. Tiny, almost embarrassingly easy, but complete. For recurring worries, you can go one step further and schedule them. This is called worry time. You choose a 10 to 15 minute window each day, say 7 p.m., where you are allowed to think about a specific problem. When the thought appears at 11 a.m., you do not negotiate. You write it down and tell your brain, we'll handle this at 7 p.m. Over time, studies show, this container reduces intrusive thoughts because the brain trusts there is a planned outlet. Notice the pattern. Interrupt, then micro-action, not more analysis. You are training your brain that the reward for worry is movement, not more worry. And once your brain associates overthinking with effortful action, it starts to overthink less to conserve energy. But this is still the emergency brake. The real magic is designing your days so you almost never need to slam it. What if your default decisions and systems made actions so automatic that the spiral barely had a chance to start? So let's make that magic practical. If overthinking is your brain opening the same tabs again and again, default decisions are you installing an automatic tab closer. You decide once in a calm state, so you do not have to decide 100 times in a stressed state. A default decision is a pre-made rule. If it's Monday, Wednesday, or Friday at 6 p.m., I go to the gym. Not if I feel like it. Not if work was not too hard. The rule lives outside your mood. In other words, you move the decision from the emotional part of your brain to the calendar. When 6 p.m. hits, there is no debate to feed. There is just execution. Here's the most important detail. Psychology calls these implementation intentions. If, then plans that turn discipline into an automatic response. If X happens, then I do Y. Simple sentence, huge effect. This is because you are giving your brain a script before the scene starts. If I start scrolling mindlessly, then I put my phone in another room and open my task list. If it's 10 p.m., then I brush my teeth and read one page in bed. You are not relying on willpower in the moment. You are following a protocol you already agreed to. Now apply this to your usual spirals. Gym attendance? If it's a work day at 5:30, then I change into workout clothes before I sit down. Study time. If I finish lunch, then I open my notes and study for 15 minutes. Social media? If I sit on the couch, then the phone stays in the kitchen. Even tough conversations. If something bothers me for more than 24 hours, then I bring it up within the next day. Your brain is allowed to complain, but in this scenario, the system has already voted. The problem is that most overthinkers are not over-deciding. They are under-deciding. They never close the loop. Every hour becomes, should I work now? Should I go out? Should I answer this message? Every redecision is a fresh opportunity for a spiral and a fresh drain of energy. Default decisions close that loop once. You pay the effort cost up front, and then you collect the reward of peace later. And guess what? You can push this even further with environment design. Make the right action the easiest action. Lay out your workout clothes where you literally trip over them. Pre-open your work document before you sleep. So in the morning, your brain sees start instead of search. Remove apps from your home screen so distraction requires extra effort. Keep your journal on your pillow so you must move it to lie down. Now your comfort algorithm and your long-term goals are finally on the same team. Here is the identity shift. You are not someone who overthinks. You are a system designer. You use your brain's love of patterns, rules, and closure to build days where discipline feels almost automatic. Pattern interrupt time. Pause this video right now for 60 seconds. Write down 3 default decisions you will live by this week. Not someday, this week. When you hit play again, we will take those tiny systems and show you how to train your brain to actually crave action instead of analysis. If you actually paused and wrote those default decisions, you have already done something most overthinkers never do. You moved from spiral to system. From, why am I like this? To, this is how my brain works. So this is how I'll design around it. Let's close by zooming out. Your overthinking was never proof that you are broken. It was proof that you have a powerful survival brain wired for prediction, comfort, and control. In other words, your mind has been running emergency drills in a modern society that rarely has real emergencies. Rumination felt like intelligence, but it was fear in a lab coat, trying to keep you safe by rehearsing every possible outcome. And guess what? All those failures you blamed on weak discipline were mostly design problems. No clear deadlines, open loops everywhere, an environment that rewarded hesitation and made action expensive in terms of energy and effort. When you see it like this, guilt is not only useless, it is inaccurate. Here's the most important detail. You now have tools, 60-second pattern interrupts that snap you out of loops. Stand up, change rooms, cold water, 5 deep breaths, name 3 objects you see. Worry time containers that tell your brain, not now, at 7 p.m. Micro actions that close loops, send the email draft, fill out the first line of the form, put the shoes by the door. Default decisions and if-then rules that remove the exhausting need for constant willpower. Environment design that makes the right choice, the easy, obvious, almost automatic one. This is because your brain loves rules, closure, and predictable rewards. So imagine yourself a few weeks from now. You still overthink sometimes, but in this scenario, the spiral is shorter. You notice the mental noise. You run a 60-second interrupt. You give yourself a 24-hour decision deadline. You take one tiny action. Instead of craving endless analysis, your brain starts to crave completion. The busy brain becomes a disciplined brain because the game changed. So ask yourself, what is one decision you have been circling for weeks that you will give yourself a 24-hour deadline on starting now? If you treated overthinking as a trigger for action, what situation in your life would change first? And what 3 automatic rules could you set up this week? Simple if-then scripts, that your future self will quietly thank you for. Remember the core reframe. You do not need to stop your brain from thinking. You need to give it a better game to play. A game where the winning move is always action, not analysis. Where your identity shifts from "I am an overthinker" to "I am a person who decides, then designs, then does." So here is your next move. Comment below with one default decision or one 24-hour deadline you are committing to. Put it in writing. Then share this video with someone who is stuck in their own head, so you are not doing this alone. After that, rewatch sections 8 to 10 while actually writing your systems, step by step, so you leave with a concrete, anti-overthinking blueprint instead of just good intentions. Because this is only the beginning. In upcoming videos, we will go deeper into advanced system design and emotional regulation specifically for overthinkers, so you can turn your busy brain into your biggest advantage, not your biggest enemy. If that is the kind of discipline you want, subscribe now and let your next act begin.